Started. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Kama, Daf Ayin Vav, and Chasdei Hashem. It was easier than Ayin Hey, which I'm thrilled about. We're going to plow through that today. That whole Amud, 2 lines. And really, the game plan here is that tomorrow night we will learn in such a way that we only have a blot left for Shabbos, so a little bit more benachas, a little bit easier.
For the rest of the season.
Hour before Mincha. Yeah, really, this week should be 45 minutes, but I haven't learned the Daf yet, so I don't know how hard it is for Shabbos, so I'm not messing around. We are 2 lines from the bottom on Ayin Hey Amid Beis, and we were in the midst of discussing a sugya, a very difficult piece of Gemara, as you'll recall, with the Shita of Sumchus. We thought Sumchus was saying one thing, turns out he was saying something totally different. So Amar Mar, within the Shita of Sumchus, he had said this weird line that Hain, the Edim Zomamin were Mishalman Tashlume Kefel. And the Gemara says, wait 1 second, Midikam Moda de Ganav. In that case, that was a case where I, the Ganav, was Moda to what I had done. So at the very least, Karen by Shlume, I have to pay Karen. So why are the Edim Zomamin paying 2x? If I'm paying X, they should only have to pay X. Doesn't even make any sense. What Sumcha is talking about? So it says the Gemara, you're right. Amar Rebbe Elazar Mishmei de Rav. Tani, what should the Mishnah say? Tashlum de kefel. Not tashlum kefel, but they'll fill in the gaps of the kefel. That's how Rashi writes on the top of the page. Tashlum de kefel, mishalmin es ha-kefel. Hu mishalim shalosh levad ha-keren. So that's talking about Daled Behe. So anyways, that's how the Gemara answers over there. And that brings us to a new, had I noticed that the 2 dots was on the top of the page, I would have finished there last night, but I was stressed and I didn't even look past the last word that I prepared. Ayin Vav Amid Aleph, top line. Ganav v'hikdish. If I steal and then I try and sanctify this animal for the Beis HaMikdash, the achar kach tavachu machar, what's going on over here? Amrei says the Gemara, Bishlama tvicha lo mechayev. I understand why on the tvicha you're not mechayev. Dechi katavach, the hektish katavach, v'lo demar katavach. Because when I stole your animal, I didn't shech your animal because after I stole it, I was makdish it. So if it's gana v'hikdish, so yes, it's yours when I steal it, but once I makdish it, it's not yours anymore. So then when I do the tvicha, because it's not yours, I'm not chayev daled b'hei, because I was makdish it. Says the Gemara, Elam a hektish lechayev. However, there should be a chiyuv for the actual process of being makdish. We can't ignore that. Mali machro lehedyon, mali machro l'shamayim. Whether or not I take your item and I give it to a third party, or I give it to the Beis HaMikdash, as it relates to you, the Bailim, who cares? I took your item, I stole it, and now I no longer have it because I gave it to someone else. Does it matter that I gave it to Joe Schmo, or does it matter that I gave it to the Makam HaMikdash? Who cares the Maisa? Makdish or not Makdish? And that's the language of the Gemara. Mali machra lehedjed, mali machra l'shamayim. Klape the Ganav. It doesn't matter. The Maisa, I stole it and now I no longer have it. Now you do, and there's no more access. Says the Gemara, Hamani, who are we talking about over here? Where we have this idea where we're not going to say that you're usher on the hektish itself. It must be Hamani Reb Shimoni to Amar, and we're going to analyze this shita later today. To Amar Kachim Shechayev Ba'achrayusan. If we have something that's Chayev Ba'achrayusan, meaning that if I was makdish an animal, and if I'm Chayev Ba'achrayusan, then if the animal gets lost, I'm obligated to pay. That's Davar Hagorem LaMamon Kimamon Dami. Therefore, even though I was makdish it, but I still have a string connecting that back to me, and therefore, Birshuse Demare Kaime. Really, it's still kind of sort of connected. Says the Gemara, if that's true, Hamid, Sefer Reb Shimon Habe, Resha Lav Reb Shimon. If the Seifa, if this line that we started with on the top of this page of Gana v'Hikdish, if that's Reb Shimon, then the Resha in our Mishnah back on the bottom of Ayin Hey Amud Aleph must not be Reb Shimon. So the Gemara then presents answer number 2 to our question about Hektish being Mechayev. Oh, we're not talking about regular kachim, kodshe kachim. We're talking about kachim kalim. Ve'aliba d'Rabbi Yossi haglili d'Amar. Kachim kalim is mamon bailim hu v'rshusei kaime. It's not a full transfer over to the Makam HaMikdash. It's not. It's kachim kalim, and there it's b'rshusei kaime. Asks the Gemara, well, okay. Al kachim mai. I understand if you want to say kachim kalim is birshusei kaime, birshus bailim, Mammon Bailam. That we've seen throughout Shas numerous times. Let's just take a quick glance. We've seen it a bunch of times. We saw it here on Yud Beis. We saw it in Psachim. I feel like we've seen it more times than two. It sounds familiar for me. And if I remember something, that means we learned it a lot of times. Can't be once. So the Gemara says, kache kachim, it must be, aval kache kachimai. Do you want to say tashlum, mishalem tashlum daled behei? If that's true, then we have a problem. Adatani reisha gana v'tabach v'achar kachikdish mishalem tashlum daled behei. If it's true that your distinction is between kache kachim and kache kalim, so if that's true, then liflog b'lisni b'didot. Then the Mishnah on the bottom of Ayin Hamad Aleph should have written this exact distinction between kache kachim and kachim kalim, which is to say a third of the way down. B'medvar mamur b'kachim kalim, b'bal b'kache kachim misham tashmei abba v'chamisha. It can't be that we distinguish between kachim kalim and kache kachim, and therefore answer number 2 to our question is incorrect, and therefore our third answer and our final one for this sugya, elul olam, you're right. Lo shna kache kachim v'lo shna kachim kalim. It's all the same. You're not going to be chayiv if you're makdish something. What is the difference between mechira to a hedyot and mechira to shamayim? Remember, let's say I'm the ganav and you own the animal. I walk into your yard, I steal Betsy, I'm makdish Betsy to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Mishnah made a distinction between me selling it to a random soul and me being makdish it to the Beis HaMikdash. Why the difference? The Gemara gives a real answer. Machra lehedyot. In the beginning, when I take your animal and I steal it, and then I sell it to Gerald. Gerald is not the Beis HaMikdash; he's a regular guy. So you're not a regular guy; you're a special guy. But in the story, you're a regular guy. So says the Gemara. I love you. I just don't want there to be misunderstandings. Good recovery. It was a little late. Yeah, it was a late, poorly executed, well-intended recovery. Yep. Sorry, but I love you. Yeah, not Gerald. Not Gerald. I know. Are there any Reuven's in this year? No. Shimon. We got a Shimon in the back. So says the Gemara, here's the difference between me as the gan of giving it over to a hedyot and me as a gan of giving it over to the Beis HaMikdash. Machra lehedyot, if I sell it to you, a regular guy, meikara Torah to Reuven, v'hashta Torah to Shimon. It started out that I stole it from Reuven, and I'm the ganav, and now it's somebody else's. However, machra l'shamayim meikara Torah de Reuven v'hashta Torah de Reuven. So even though it's true that as it relates to the bailim, he doesn't care who currently holds the animal. But halachically, we look at that animal as having a different baal if it goes to the hedyot as opposed to hektish. When it goes to another hedyot guy, so then it's no longer Reuven's shore, now it's Shimon's shore. Masha ein kain, if we look at it from the lens of hektish, it remains Reuven's shore, which is chayv b'achrayusan, and therefore it physically changed hands, but it didn't halachically change hands. And that brings us to the 2 dots halfway down. If you flip back just for a moment to the bottom of Ayin Daled Amud Beis, there's a Mishnah there. We saw a bunch of shitas in the beginning, a bunch of cases, and at the end of the Mishnah on Ayin Daled Amud Beis, I earlier referred to the Mishnah on Ayin Hamad Aleph. That's a typo. That's actually the Mishnah here on Ayin Daled Amud Beis. Here at the end of the Mishnah, it says, Reb Shimon Omer Kachim Shechai Bachar Yusam Mishalem Tashlum Daled Behei She'ein Chai Bachar Yusan Pater. So that's the line that we're going to analyze now. Says the Gemara, Reb Shimon Omer, and he says that if you're Chai Bachar Yusan X, and if you're not Chai Bachar Yusan Y. Amrei Nihid the Savar Reb Shimon Mali Machar Lehedjod Mali Machar L'Shamayim. I could understand, and this was answer number 1 that we saw 5 lines down on Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, that there should be no difference to the bailim. We pointed out a difference, but Reb Shimon didn't hold up this difference. Of Mali Machar Lehedjod, it shouldn't matter to the bailim if I sell it to Gerald or if I sell it to the Beis HaMikdash. But says the Gemara, granted he holds that, but even so, Ipchami Bailei. The din at the safe of our Mishnah on Ayin Daled Amud Beis should have been different. It should have been that Kodshim Shechai Ba'achrayusan, instead of saying Chayiv like our Mishnah does, we should have said Pater. Yakati lo nafak merishusei. You haven't gotten rid of it yet. So how could you say that the person's Chayiv Daled Behei? You can only be Mechayiv me on Daled Behei if I'm Mocher or if I'm Toveach. But if I'm Chayiv Ba'achrayusan, why are you saying Chayiv? Chayiv Ba'achrayusan means that it's stuck with me because Davar Hagorim Lamamon Kemamon Dami. It should be mine. And as well, whereas in our Mishnah it said Pater, we should dafka say Chayiv because the mafkit le'emer reshus say. Now it's no longer in your reshus. So how do we understand the shita of Reb Shimon at the end of our Mishnah on Ayin Daled Amud Beis? The Gemara 2/3 of the way down responds. Amrei Reb Shimon Amilsa Ach Risi Koi. Yet again, we saw this yesterday as well, where Sumchus had a line and we were completely missing the context. Here too, we have a line of Reb Shimon in our Mishnah 9 Daled Amud Beis, and we are completely missing the context. That's why learning Mishnayos alone is not sufficient. There's so much to unpack, and sometimes the Mishnah is not what it seems because Rebbe wrote them in a super concise way. Kahati. Kahati is the magic. That's because he gives you all of this, because he learns Shas. We should be able to write Kahati by learning enough Gemara. So the Gemara says, Amar Reb Shimon Amil Sach Risi Koi. What really is Reb Shimon talking about? V'hachik tani. Ein hagonev achar haganev mishalim tashlumei kefel. If I steal from you, and then Shimon steals from me, so then there's no Daled Behei. Now, that is what we are putting into this Mishnah on Ayin Daled Amud Beis. There is literally zero hint and zero reference to this case. That's why we need the Gemara. It could be that the Rebbe made a mistake, but it doesn't say Chasuri Mechzer v'hachik tani. It means that the way Rebbe, that's the nafkamina. Chasuri Mechzer means that either Rebbe left something out, which I doubt, or really more likely as editors were copying and pasting over Mishnayos. What? No.
It's a case where Rebbe kept the Mishnah in a way that was easy to memorize. And the memorizing took precedence over the understanding. So
But it wasn't a chisaron in text.
No, he left it out on purpose so that
Chasuri Mechzer v'hachik tani. This is how the Mishnah should be taught.
it should be, but it wasn't passed down that way because there's certain nuances that I've never quite understood the patterns of, whether it's rhymes or whether it's,
Yeah,
a ton
I
of
did it. I did a
ratios.
ton of, yeah,
But that concept, because remember, they were memorizing.
poetry, yeah.
Which is wild, but.
I'm not questioning what you're saying. It's hard for me because of the language of the hachik tani. Yeah.
More important that they be able, but I've never seen it inside, so I don't know that fact.
Did you hear it b'shem somebody?
Supposedly, it's in the Tiferes Israel somewhere, but. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know the Tiferes Israel, so Can either confirm or deny that.
You don't know.
This is a shiur.
I've got
Okay, that's beautiful. It's beautiful, but then how do we compare this to that?
Because if it's so clear without the certain answer that doesn't make sense, why didn't somebody add it back in? Why?
But the Gemara did add it back in. Without you telling me this, I would have. No, but I would have thought that the language of Chasuri Mechzer b'hachik tani means that something was omitted.
Fell out.
Yeah, just by editors over the years, by copiers.
Or just got forgotten or something.
Correct.
This says different.
Very
Otherwise, we
interesting.
get added back in theory.
Yeah, or at least see a footnote on the side. Or really what the Gemara was intending on doing, not like you're saying, is that you should add it back in. Because then now I'm torn with this piece of Gemara, because here the Gemara says that Amilsa Achrisi Koi, that really the din of Reb Shimon is talking about, it's Ein Gonev Minaganav. That's not found in our Mishnah. You should add it in a case. Is that the same thing as Chasuri Mechzer b'hachik tani?
It's a long enough mission to memorize. That's it.
Yeah. And this, yes. I would add this in that you have to now distinguish between the corrections of this kind of Gemara, where it doesn't say Chasuri Mechzera, versus a Gemara that does say Chasuri Mechzera. You should write a paper on this in your free time. You could do it on the airplane to Israel in our mission.
Yeah, but on the 29th.
If you say another comment, I'm gonna throw you out. That's what's gonna happen now. We're
29th is the same on this Masech.
not for me. I will be in the Holy Land.
Do the same there.
Maybe I should do the same there. If you guys all come, I'll do the same there. Is my pitch strong enough yet? I'm not done yet. I have more. Love this shiur. Love it. All right. So we had said that the din of Reb Shimon, which really in its initial form sounded backward. Why would you say chayev on Daled Behei when the maiset's still in your rishus? And why would you say pater on Daled Behei when it's not in your rishus? It doesn't make any sense. So really he's talking about ein hagonev achar aganim mishalem tashlum Daled Behei v'chein gonev hektish mi beis bailim pater. If if you as the owner were makdash it in your house and then I stole it, the halacha also is that you are pater. So both in gonev achar aganev, and if I steal something that was already hektish, you're pater, my taima, because the pasuk reads v'gunav mi beis ha'ish v'lo mi beis hektish. The pasuk says that you're not going to be chayiv in dalad behay because you have to steal it from a regular person, not from regular person. You have to steal it from someone whose animal is regular. It's actually not about the person per se, other than to say he's not the Beis Hamikdash, he's not the gizbar, he's not an employee. And Reb Shimon Omer, because when you steal something that has achrayis, that's karinan bay, the gunav mi beis haish, because you still have some tethering to that. There's still some of that idea of kol agorim lemamon kemamun dami, that I have some halachic. I don't own it, but I'm achray for it. It's a middle of the road between owning and not owning, which is I don't own it, but if something happens to it, I have to pay for it. So this answers up the question of Reb Shimon, that really the mission on the bottom of Ayin Daled Amud Beis is either missing something or needs some context. And as the answer framed out over here, that Amrei Reb Shimon Amil Sachrisi Koi, which we see 2/3, 3/4 of the way down, that our Mishnah was missing something. Now the Gemara analyzes this. Michli, let's take a good look. Sham'inan le the Reb Shimon. It sounds like from the Shita Reb Shimon, the Amar Shchita she'ena ru'uya lo shma shchita. It seems that in general, Reb Shimon was of the opinion that if you have a shchita that's not ru'uya, then that's not called a shchita. How does that apply over here? Kodshim nami shchita she'ena ru'uyahi. If I shecht an animal that's kodshim, and I'm chayiv ba'achvar yusan, I should be pater. Why? The Mishnah says you're chayiv in the name of Reb Shimon. Why should I be pater? Because at the end of the day, the shechita was a zero. It's not shechita. Well, you killed an animal. It's nechira. You killed an animal. That's what we call killing an animal without shechita is nechira. That's what the American, I don't know what it's called, but the American slaughter world, that's what they do. They take a 2-foot stake and they put it right between the eyes, breaks the brainstem, animal dies fairly quickly. By us, that animal's an avela doraisa. It's the what's the pasuk? Thank you. So there, that's mamish nechira. That's completely usher. Hunting, all of those things. Hunting is usher because of tzar ba'alei chaim. We're allowed to kill animals kasher tzivisicha to proper shchita. Anyways, the Gemara over here says that you're killing an animal that you cannot eat, and that is kachim nami shchita she'ein ru'uya. So why would you be chayiv daled vehei? So the Gemara says a couple of answers. Answer number one. We're going to see 3 answers. You have a perfectly fine animal, and you shechted it in the right place, but l'shem bailim. So right after the shechita was done, it was done l'shem bailim, and that is still considered to be a shechita re'uya, afal pi that it's kachim. So therefore, don't argue to me that you shouldn't be chayiv daled behei in such a case, because when that shechita was done, it was done mibifnim, granted. Okay, the Kohen, you're Yisrael, you can't even go there. You halachically can't even literally be there. We have the place for the Yisraelim, we have the Machane Levia, we can't even go there. But it doesn't matter. Be'etzem the shchita was a kosher shchita. But in let's say that in this particular case that he even gave the animal back, because let's say they bring the meat out to him and he gives it back. I'm a ganev, but I give it back to you. So then why should I be chayav daled behei? Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ovin shenishbach hadam. This is already halacha / hashkafa. The reason why over here you have to pay back daled behei, even if you give the body of the animal back, is in an ukimta where it was nishbach hadam. We know that shchita has 4 steps. It's shchita, kabbalah, holacha, and zrika. And if the kohen spills the blood and there's no opportunity to do zrika sadam, then you still have to pay daled behei. What about the basar? The basar is not the ikar. The ikar is the kapara, and the kapara takes place only with the zrika. So therefore, we have a ukimta that if in fact there was nishbach hadam, you would be chayav daled behei. Of course, the Gemara doesn't go this far, but it is true that if you were not nishbach hadam, then you would not be chayav daled behei. But be'etzem, and this is a fascinating idea to analyze, when we say daled behei, it's not because of the animal itself, certainly as it relates to hektish, but because of nishbach hadam, that if you had an opportunity to do zrika sadam and you ruined it, daled behei, because that is the actual real value of the animal. That's answer number 1. That was Rav Dimi. And Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ovin shenishbach Adam. Oh, sorry, next line. Ki asa Ravin Amar Rav Yochanan. So Ravin and Rav Dimi were both Talmidim of Rav Yochanan, and here he gives a different answer of Rav Yochanan. B'shochet timimim bifnim she lo l'shem bailim. You did a shechita on a perfectly fine animal, but it wasn't l'shem bailim. And Rashi says on the bottom of the page, 3 lines from the bottom, Dibra maskil shelo l'shem bailim, t'shchita re'uyahi. So it's still considered to be a shchita re'uya. Right? All of this requires time and rishonim, but we're kind of getting the gist over here that, first of all, there's a machlokas in the Talmidim of Rav Yochanan, Aleph, that we should see that. It's Rav Dimi on the one side and Ravin on the other. We've now solved the shchita she'ein re'uya problem in one of 2 ways. And on the top of Ayin Vav Amud Beis, we'll solve another one. We're going to be going to the top of Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, 3 lines down. That's where we're going to stop tonight. Let's learn answer number 3. And let's remember our question. Our question was, isn't this a shchita she'eina re'uya? And if that's true, you shouldn't be chayiv dalveh. You didn't do shchita, you did nechira. You're chayiv keren, you damaged an animal, but it's not shchita. So the Gemara says, don't worry. Rab Shimon Reish Lakish Amar, it was kachim, it was hektish, but the animal was a balmum, and you didn't shecht it inside the azara. You're not allowed to shecht an animal in the appropriate place when it's a balmum. You shechted it bachutz. Rashi fills in the gaps. Dibur hamaskel ba'alei mum in top of the line. Shchitasan heter bachutz, and therefore it's a shchita re'uya. This animal is a balmum. What's the right place to shecht an animal? What is the right place to shecht an animal that's a balmum? That is bachutz. So says the Gemara, Tahi ba Rebbe Lazar. Tahi ba means that he had some wonderment. He didn't understand. He didn't understand what was going on. First of all, the Rabbi Yochanan, shchita materes. The shchita itself is the matir. Halozrika materes. So if you look back at the 2 answers of Rav Yochanan, the first answer of Rav Yochanan did speak about zrika, but the second answer of Rav Yochanan in the name of Ravin didn't speak about zrika. That's a chisaron in the whole idea of shchita. It's not just that shchita is a matir, zrika is a matir. How can the second answer of Rav Yochanan in the name of Ravin ignore that idea? And the Gemara asks another question on behalf of Rebbe Lazar. L'reish Lakish, who is of the opinion that we were talking about shchitas mumin bachutz, shchita materes. It's not the shchita that's matir that case. V'halo pedia materes. Only when you're poda that kachim in a way where we can reduce the level of sanctity down to chulin, because afal pi that there's a mum, we need the halachic process to say it used to be kachim. Okay, there's a mum. Let's lower the status. So it's not the shchita mineyubei. So says the Gemara, Rebbe Lazar actually made a big error. Rebbe Lazar ishtamit say ha de Reb Shimon. He forgot about a very important idea of Reb Shimon. And this idea of Reb Shimon is quick and easy, and it's going to govern the rest of the daf today. What did Reb Shimon teach that Rebbe Lazar forgot, and therefore Rebbe Lazar asked his questions that we will soon see make no sense? The Gemara says, Kol ha'omei lizrok kizaruk tami. Any animal that is, in theory, able to have zrika sadam, then it says though there is zrika sadam, and therefore, in the answer of Ravin that Rebbe Lazar was bothered by, the answer of Ravin in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, answer number 2, where he said that there was shchita but not zrika, it's okay that there wasn't zrika, because if it's omed lizrok, then it's kizarok. I mean, we don't need it to happen. It just needs to be theoretically possible, plausible, and we want it to happen. But if it doesn't happen, we assume it's kizarok dami, even though only the shchita has taken place. If it's impossible to do zrika, it's ma'akev. If it's possible to do zrika, let's say you did the shchita, your Kabbalah was great, your holacha was great, and you're sitting there about to sprinkle, even though you didn't sprinkle, since omed kizaruk is kizaruk tami, even though you've done the shchita is still the matir as it relates to the kachem, and therefore, taking it to its fullest extent, in answer number 2 of Ravin, he said that the shchita was matir to make it a shchita re'uya. You didn't do the zrika, that's okay. If it's omed lizrok, it's kizaruk tami. And as well, the Chol HaOmed Liftos, referencing the kasha we asked on Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish wanted to say that there were Shochet Baalei Mumen Bachutz. Asked the Gemara, what do you mean that's not enough? The Shechita is not enough. We need a Pediya. We need the Pidyon to lower the status of the Baal Mum down to Chulin. So the Gemara says here too, 5 lines down, Ayin Vav Amud Beis, the Chol HaOmed Liftos is also Kepadui Dami, and therefore we are good to go. And all of Rebbe Lazar's questions fall away. Therefore, we have 3 seemingly valid answers. You wanted to say that it's Kodshim, and if it's Kodshim, then we should say Shchita she'ein ru'iyah lo shma Shchita, and therefore, how could you be Chayav Daled Beis? So we have 3 answers. We have Rav Yochanan number 1, Rav Yochanan number 2, and Reish Lakish. All of them are valid answers. So says the Gemara, where do we learn these 2 ideas of Rav Shimon from? The idea of Kol ha'omed lizro kizarok dami and Kol ha'omed liftos kipadui dami. Says the Gemara, Kol ha'omed lizro kizarok dami. How do we know, to Stan's question, that when zrika is in theory possible, it's as if it's done, even though it's not, and therefore, even though the zrika wasn't done, we'll still view the shchita as the matir. So says the Gemara, 1/3 of the way down to Tanya, 1/4 of the way down. Reb Shimon Omer. Yesh nosar shu metame tumas ochlin. There is a type of nosar, which is, of course, food that has expired in regards to the halachic limits of how long the food is available. And under certain circumstances, that nosar will be metame tumas ochlin, will generate a tuma for the food. V'yesh nosar she'eno metame tumas ochlin. There are also times when nosar kicks in where there is no tumas ochlin. So what is each case? Ketzat. Lon lifnei zrika. If a night transpires, lon from the word sleeping, but of course it means leaving over in regards to the world of nosar. Lon lifnei zrika einu metame tumas ochlin. If a night transpired before the zrika, that's not metame tumas ochlin. And la'achar zrika, if the lon was after zrika, then it's metame tumas ochlin. The kaimalon, my lifnei zrika. What does it mean, lifnei zrika? So says the Gemara, Kodem she nira lezrika. And what's la'achar zrika? Le'achar she nira lezrika. And we still don't know what this means. Kodem she nira lezrika lon maihi to lohav yashahus b'yom lemizrake. There was no time during the day to actually do the zrika. Korbanos were typically brought during the day, with rare exception. We know that the pedarim and avarim, those were all burned at night, but korbanos were typically brought during the day. That's why some of the halachos, Maseches, brachos, in the 4th parak, we speak about this idea that tefillah is learned from korbanos. So we have halachic limits of time, just like we would have like anything else. So the Gemara says, the case of the lo havya shehus b'yom lemizrake was the shachde samach l'shkia sachama. Let's say the Kohanim did the shechita right before sunset. Ve'enu metame tumas ochlin. Their halacha will not kick in tuma because there wasn't an opportunity to do zrika. And la'achar shenir lezrika lan, what does that mean? Dahavya shehus b'yom lemizrake. And because you had the opportunity to do the zrika and you didn't, metame tumas ochlin. Alma kol ha'omed lizro kizaruk tami. And the Gemara infers from here that because of the fact that you could have done the zrika, but you didn't, therefore you're metame tumas ochlin. So this is a lengthy way of basically proving the first part of Reb Shimon, that kol ha'omed lizrok is kizarok tami. Just fascinating to note, this is really an aside, that the whole model of tuma is not rational, it's halachic. We should not assume that it's like, physical contact, touch tame. It's not like that. It's not like that. We also know, like by an apple, we have a din of a tibul b'mashka, that if you're eating fruits and vegetables, halacha l'maisa, you have to wash netilas yadayim. We don't typically make a bracha unless you follow the minhagim of the Gra. The Gra said that if you wash tibul b'mashka, you want to eat salad with your fingers. If you eat salad with a fork, you don't have to wash netilas yadayim. But that's why even on Pesach, when we wash, we really don't need to. Well, most of us don't do that unless you're eating celery. It depends what you're eating. In our family, we usually eat soft potatoes and we eat it with a fork. But really, the din of tibul b'mashka. So let's say there's no liquid touching. So then, if the food's dry, you don't have to wash your hands. You're good to go. What about tuma? It's halachic tuma. You need the liquid medium to transfer the here too. By virtue of the fact that you couldn't even bring the zrika because shkia hit, that's not your fault. So those foods are not subject to tuma. All right, let's continue with the last idea. 2 lines from the bottom on Ayin Vav Amud Beis. The Chol HaOmed Liftos Kipadui Dami. The idea that solved Rabbi Lazar's kasha on Reish Lakish at the top of the page was based on the fact that kol ha'omer liftos kipadui dami titanya. Reb Shimon Omer, para metame tumas ochlin. In regards to a case of para, take a look at Rashi. Para aduma metama tumas ochlin. Hoel v'haisa lo shas kosher, because there was a time when, in theory, it was edible. Rashi, tahav yala shas kosher. First time in Shas, I've learned every Rashi with the room. Says the Gemara. Gotta call it out. I didn't say Tosfos. Don't get excited. We will be here until next Tuesday. So, and this would take a year to learn. It would take a week to learn properly.
This is the longest Daf.
Yeah, this is the longest Daf. And for us, it's the shortest Daf. Well, we had one Daf that had no words on it. And some Masechta back in the day. Where was that? I have no idea. It was last Masechta? What was that? Kiddushin?
Yeah.
It feels longer ago than that.
We're already, like 75.
We're 75 blotted. That's 2.5 months. It feels longer than that. Feels like 5 or 6 months to me. Okay, so by para aduma, that's metama tumas ochlin. Why is it subject to tuma? Because in theory it was edible. Remember, shchita she'ein ru'ya lo shma shchita. But over here we're saying that by para aduma that it is subject to tuma because hol v'haisa lo shas kosher. Rashi says lechol. We could have eaten it. Mishanishchata v'yard lo toras ochel. It had a din of that which is fit for food. The way that it would work is that we would shech the para aduma halavai sheniska. We should do it soon. That when we shech the para aduma, between the time of the shchita and the sreifa, in order to get it down to ash, that technically speaking, there's a shas kosher. Therefore, it's subject to tuma. And as we turn to the top of Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, this is a blot and a half night. Bama Reish Lakish Omer Haya Reb Shimon. You got to be proud. Omer Haya Reb Shimon para niftes al gabe ma'arachasa. That in regards to a para aduma, if it were to have been niftes, if it were to have been redeemed in theory before it was burned, alma, it would work. Alma kol ha'omei liftos kipadui dami. Therefore, what we see is that in theory, pidyon can happen even though it didn't happen. In theory, we could have been poded at the para aduma. Everybody would hate you for it because the para aduma is metahar tmeim. If you found a better one, would be a great solution. Yes. Why not take both? Oh, you're saying because of Hidur mitzvah? I didn't see that.
Why else would you possibly be being owed a duma?
Yeah.
You waited all that time to get one.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be a culture where they have numerous paradumas. There's been over the years, there's been a couple of things in the news about like, oh, I think we might have found. But even if it has 2 black hairs, the whole thing is done. Like it's a very strict, and then asher lo ubad bava, asher lo mashcha leha be'ol, like all the dinim that apply, which are obviously very difficult. So anyways, I just want to summarize this last piece. We were bothered by Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar had a double kasha based on the 3 answers. The first was on Rabbi Yochanan. How can you say that shchita is a matir, harei zrika is a matir? We solved that problem with Rabbi Shimon. And then also in regards to Reish Lakish, she was bothered that we said that by the shchita that of the balmum that was done bachutz, that it's not the shchita that's matir, it's the pidyon that's matir. And there too, we said that that kol ha'omei liftos kipadui dami, and therefore problem solved. So Mirz Hashem, tomorrow night we'll pick up with Bishlama, 3 lines down. We'll learn an odd blot of Ayin Zayin Amud Beis and Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. Oh, more. Wait, which one's Shabbos blot now? Now I'm confused. Wednesday's blot was Ayin Vav. Thursday's blot was Ayin Zayin. Friday's blot is Ayin Ches. So we'll have some good work to do tomorrow. We'll do a blot and a half tomorrow. I feel like something didn't work out right here, but it's all good. We'll figure it out. All right, we'll stop right here. Wishing you all a beautiful night.